Now, welcome to the return of Battle of the Heroes and Villains. This is a series that I'm sure many of you will remember, one that sort of got discontinued or canceled after YouTube changed how their polls work, only allowing me to put up 4 options instead of 5 like I used to. Though this new system where I will just be manually tallying up the votes allows me to do 6 options, so we can now have an S tier where we couldn't before. Meaning, yes, I am going to start this whole thing over. To be fair, the old results are being tossed out, though here they are if you are either curious as to what they were or want to remember if you watched the old series. And yes, a lot of the characters on this list have had new content since the original voting, so it'll be kind of nice to do them over again and see how they all pan out. Anyway, the first character we're doing is Luthen Rael from Andor, and the next one will be up to you to decide, and how that works is, and you can go ahead and do all this right now if you want to, but I'm going to pin a comment below asking for a character name. You respond with a character name, and it can be virtually any Star Wars character you want it to be, and everyone can then vote on the character we do next by giving the character's comment a thumbs up, whichever single comment that is. I don't add up multiple comments with the same character and combine votes, it's just one comment, so try not to leave a character name that has been left before and splitting your vote potentially. Alright, and now on to the results, and again I had to do these manually, and there were 600 some comments, so it did take me a bit of time. Though funny enough, I did try to have AI do it. I'm going to be honest, I tried to do it that way, but clearly the results were not accurate that they came up with. Though funny enough, it did say, the AI said it refused to count votes from anyone or any comment that didn't watch Andor, saying it wouldn't be fair to judge without having seen the show, so I did kind of appreciate that from the AI. But anyway, I did count them all myself, so they might not be 100% accurate, but they're going to be 99% accurate. I think I did a pretty good job here. And apologies for the generic graphics and stuff here. I'll try to come up with something better as the series goes on. And if anyone is interested in perhaps making a logo for the series, you can always send me your idea or send it to the email address in the description below. If I happen to get multiple submissions, and do keep it relatively simple here, something that I can slap on the thumbnail or in the bottom corner of the thumbnail and use here in the video for the ranking list like I used to. But if I do get multiple submissions, I'll probably let my Discord vote on the one to use. All of that finally out of the way and actually getting to the results for Luthen now, we'll see that 89% of voters put him in the S tier, 9% thought he was an A tier character. There was then another 1% that gave him a B, another 1% that gave him a C, 0%, though there was one vote, that gave him a D, and a final 1% that gave him an F. I believe there were 3 votes that just happened to tick over or be enough to round up to 1%, because as you can see here, this actually adds up to 101%. That's not a mistake, that's just the way the numbers round up. But when it comes to tallying the final score, what I did here, and it's going to be more accurate than it used to be because I have each individual result, is I just take the number of S tier votes, multiply it by 5, and go on down the list to 0 points for F tier, and then divide by the total number of comments, and I get my final score. And in this case, that score ends up to be 4.84, which will of course put him in the first place overall right now. And we will see how long it takes to knock him from that perch. That's going to be a very impressive score, I think. I think he might stand there for a while unless we go for some of the more bigger name characters, which is very possible. Like I said, any character, we are redoing all of them, so pick any character you want. We'll be redoing characters like Luke, Anakin, Obi-Wan, those that will very likely be towards the top. Alright, and to begin to figure out why he was voted so high, let's get to some comments now. But not before, once again, just saying thank you to everyone who votes or comments or watches these or any of my videos across both the channels, as well as a huge thank you to those who support the channels on Patreon. Thank you so much for that. And now on to the top rated comment left on the poll, which this time came to us from Cheesehead Caleb, who said, "Definitely S tier. His monologue from season 1 alone is enough to put him there, and the rest of his writing is fantastic too." And though his monologue from season 1, that 1 minute, minute and a half speech, might just be one of, if not the best little speeches I have ever heard in the history of entertainment, and I do not say that lightly, and I do mean it, that it was pretty incredibly written and acted by Stellan Skarsgård, I don't know that that alone would put him in S tier. I kind of disagree with that. I know where you're coming from, I get the spirit behind it, but I certainly wouldn't say that alone makes him deserve an S tier, as much as just everything else about the character is what makes him an S tier character. In my opinion, I would put him S tier too, for the record. Again, I get what you're saying. I understand why there were other comments that said something very similar, that that speech alone is the reason why I'm giving him S tier. But I think it's just the whole package. Just again, the way this character is written, consistently written across 2 seasons, the way he is acted by Stellan Skarsgård. Then, of course, the show itself that he is in helps elevate the character as well. If he was this well written and everything else about the show was poor, I don't know that he is an S tier character just because the show itself would bring him down. But he is also elevated by the fantastic all-around writing of the show. So even though that is arguably the greatest speech I have ever heard in entertainment, in a movie, show, game, whatever it might be, book, I would not say that that alone makes him an S tier character. It is just everything about him, and again, the show around him, that elevates him to that level, in my opinion. Alright, moving on, and once again, as was the case with the original series, as I tried to do, I'm not just going to read all the positive comments and ignore anything negative, though in this case, there really weren't negative comments. Even those that said he was F tier really didn't say anything above and beyond that, other than maybe they hated the show and thus hate him too. But anyway, we'll go to this comment from Satcham, who said, B, very good, but there is a lot of very good in Star Wars. S should be for a select few. I still consider him a side character. I loved him in Andor, but I think people are overranking him. And I do get where you're coming from. I disagree because, as I said, I give him an S tier, but I do get where you're coming from, that S tier should be reserved for the greatest characters in Star Wars, that you would think the Lukes and the Palpatines and the Obi-Wans and those sort of characters are the ones who belong in there, Anakin, of course. But I do think, and there were other comments that said something similar that were kind of referring to that there's only these select few that should go in there. But in my opinion, he elevated himself to that level already. And I mean, he's not going to get another chance. It's very unlikely we're going to see him anywhere else ever again. Maybe he's in a book or a comic somewhere along the way, who knows. But we're never going to see Luthen Rael on screen again, or very unlikely to see that on screen again. So I don't think it's fair to just say, well, since he's not one of these old beloved characters, we shouldn't consider him, or potentially consider him, an S tier. If that's the case, it's unlikely any other character is ever going to ascend to S tier. And again, I understand what you're saying, and what other people who said something similar are saying, that no, we shouldn't just give every character an S tier. One of the reasons I'm happy to put S tier in here is because a lot of people complain A tier was kind of too generic, that the really good characters got in there and some of the maybe not quite so great characters got in there, and we had no way to separate the two, separate the truly amazing characters from the really, really good ones. So in other words, I don't want to see every character suddenly put into S tier and kind of defeating the purpose of getting the S tier finally. But I do think in this case, Luthen Rael, and it's my opinion, you can disagree, that is completely fine. But in my opinion, he is one of the greatest characters in the history of Star Wars. He does belong in the S tier. Alright, and now we move on to this comment from Garrett the Viking, who said, S tier. The writing for Luthen and the acting from Stellan Skarsgård not only made him captivating to watch, but also firmly established him as one of the most important characters in Star Wars history. Without him, there is no rebellion. He helped mold Mon Mothma into the rebel leader she becomes, whether she would want to admit that or not, and his team is the reason she wasn't killed after her speech. His recruitment of Lonnie Young is the reason the rebels found out about the Death Star. He recruited Cassian Andor, who helped get the Death Star plans to the rebellion. His hand is in some of the biggest rebel events that wouldn't have happened without him. He's such an interesting character. I could probably write an entire essay on why he is such a great character, but I'll save some words for the next battle of the heroes and villains. And I think the thing that is so fascinating about him is you list all of these things that he is a part of or responsible for, and that, again, if you subtract him from the equation, the rebellion probably never reaches the heights it does. It never wins in the end. And so you're looking at all these accomplishments, and it feels like, well, this just feels unrealistic. Like, if you would showing me that list before Andor started, that there's going to be a character who does all of these things, I'd be like, oh god, he just seems like a crazy, overpowered character, and it's completely unbelievable. But what's amazing is he's actually a very, very believable character. You don't realize just how many things he is responsible for, how important of a character he is, until you step back and look at the whole picture, and you're like, my goodness, he is responsible for all these things, and it happens in a way that feels natural, not forced. None of it really comes off as too over the top at any point. He just feels like a guy who is devoted to his cause at any price, at any cost. And in the process, he accomplishes so much, but will, of course, as he lamented, he will never get the recognition or credit he feels like he deserves and would like to see. Okay, and moving right along now, we have a comment here from Infinite Donuts, who said, his character could not have been written more perfectly. There were so many theories as to who he was and his background. Many were great, but none were as fitting as him being so driven to see the destruction of the Empire, precisely because of what they had him do when he fought for it. It is the feeling of wanting to make up for all the wrong he took part in under their banner that made him want to bring about their downfall by any means possible. And there were a lot of theories as to who Luthen Rael would be, what his backstory was, and many of them involved him being a former Jedi, a survivor of Order 66 or something along those lines. And no, that wasn't it at all. It was kind of as simple as he was a sergeant under the Empire, he saw some crazy stuff, and it broke him. It's kind of beautiful in its simplicity that we didn't need this elaborate story of how, oh, he was a Jedi and he lost all his comrades after Order 66, and he's just a Jedi who fell kind of to the dark side and is doing bad things now, though for good reasons. And though, yeah, that's an interesting story too, don't get me wrong. Again, there's something about the simplicity of it. That he was a grunt in the military. He was a sergeant in the military who saw way too many terrible things. He saw what the Empire was doing, and he basically snapped and devoted the rest of his life to stopping what he had seen, and trying to stop it by any means necessary. Alright, and now I'm just going to read a few more final comments minus my own thoughts, and the first one comes to us from Chris Hunt, who said, S tier. Luthen somehow combines strong audience appeal with a grounding that we should be judgmental of his methods, all while fitting into the canon and vibe of this time period and serving as an exploration of a particular type of revolutionary leader. Luthen's character is iconic on a first watch and from a general audience perspective, but has depths to be discovered on repeat viewings and for those with historical and political background to recognize the ideologies and historical characters he is a reference to. Then we have this one from Mando Commando, who said, B, a solid character, well written and interesting with a couple of standout scenes, but no way would crack my top 10. I know a lot of people really love him, especially as a beacon of hope in an age of slop, but in all honesty, I found him above average, but not in competition with the heavy hitters in A and S, more on the same level as, say, Lando. We also then have this one from Kriv, who said, S tier, one of the most layered characters in Star Wars, from his dual personality between rebel agent and shopkeeper, to his complex and nuanced morality when it comes to what he's willing to do to further the rebellion. He's endlessly fascinating. He's also played by one of the best actors working today, Stellan Skarsgård, and an integral part of the best pieces of Star Wars media to come out ever. One of the most significant characters in the franchise due to his critical role in the rebellion, yet tragically, he's soon forgotten and doesn't live to see the sunrise he made happen. And finally, we have this comment from Derek Dean, who said, S tier. He was so well written and so well acted. I still love that scene in season 1 where he puts on the wig and his fancy clothes and his rings and adopts the antique dealer persona in the mirror. Christopher Reeve may edge out Skarsgård in portrayal of two people at once, but not by much. Alright, well that's going to be all I got for you this time. It is now your turn to take to the comments below and tell us what you think of Luthen Rael, or tell us what you think about where he ended up getting ranked, or tell us what you think about what anyone had to say about him here in this video. Or you can of course vote for the character we do next. You just got to respond to that pinned comment below with a name, or vote with a thumbs up for the one you'd like to see. But whatever you choose to do, leave a comment below. Let's talk some Star Wars, and until next time, thanks for watching.